Hi, welcome today. My name is Lynette, and this is Off the Road, a channel that looks into all matters African and all matters development. So today our focus will be Ethiopia, and Ethiopia is one of the biggest countries in Africa. It is the second most populous country in Africa. Their government constitutes of a federal government that has regional blocks that have power. You know, they have regional blocks and it's federal, almost like the US, how the US would work. And a little backdrop on Ethiopia is that they come from a communist influence. So I think if you can look, if you have time, you can check my other vlogs and see I had talked about Somalia and how they fought Ethiopia over Somalia wanting to have a greater Somalia and annex part of Ethiopia. So there was that Ogaden battle, and what happened is Ethiopia won. So Ethiopia had gotten, you know, Somalia also had Soviet backing, but at some point I think the Soviet Union leaders and supporters saw that the president Siad Barre was not that serious with the communist, you know, policies and things like that, and they realized that Ethiopia at the time were more interested in that, so they just moved and started supporting Ethiopia. So they gave them a lot of military backing, training, and things like that. So when Somalia came to fight for what they believed was their right to Somali, they were pushed back. Actually, it was just according to the Scrabble of Africa, the borders were actually, that was Ethiopia, but there's Somali on that. You remember the borders on the Scramble of Africa. So sometimes you find certain communities that are bordering, but they speak the same tribe, they look the same, but they're in different countries. So that's the backdrop. That's how the federal and you know, the regional blocks came about. And for the longest time, like for a total of 30 years, the TPLF, which is a political party, so the government is formed of a coalition of parties from the different regions in Ethiopia. So the most dominant was the TPLF, which is the Tigray People's Liberation Front. And it's so interesting because Tigray only forms like 7% of the population in Ethiopia, yet they had so much power. I'm yet to find out how they were able to, you know, influence the other parties and the governments to have so much power, because TPLF actually ruled Ethiopia for 30 years. And they really did a good job, to be honest. Like, there was peace, stability. There was a lot of economic growth during the 30 years. Like, Ethiopia was doing really well. They were trading with the US, and you know, being a rich country in agriculture, they are really, it's a really strategic country also in Africa, right? So what happened? But the problem with TPLF was just one: they were authoritarian. So that meant they were repressive to the people of Ethiopia. So yes, you're bringing economic development. Yes, you are uniting the country, and it is peaceful, quote unquote. But the people cannot, they're repressed. They cannot talk. They cannot talk against the government. They cannot talk against the TPLF. So they were getting disgruntled. And it came by this gentleman called Abiy Ahmed, who was part of the government at that time. He was part of the TPLF. The time was right. People were just tired. They were tired after 30 years of having a repressive government. They are like, okay, we want someone different. And Abiy Ahmed comes from the Oromo people. That's the second most populous group or tribe in Ethiopia. The first one being the Amharas. So those Amharas, and then the Oromo, then the other tribes, and then the Tigrans, who had a lot of power, political power. So he was voted in 2018, and people were happy, and he was doing a lot. He was freeing political prisoners. You know, he was making good economic reforms for the country. He was promising a lot. And actually, President Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister, it's actually Prime Minister. Their president is different. The president of Ethiopia is more ceremonial than executive. So he's the Prime Minister. Abiy Ahmed, when he became the Prime Minister, was bringing a lot of change, and people were really happy. They were feeling that, wow, this is what we've been waiting for. This is what we've been clamoring and fighting for. So, and in 2018, he also brokered peace with Eritrea. So Eritrea and Ethiopia were fighting. Actually, it was Tigray and Eritrea. They were fighting over territories at the border. So the region of Tigray had because it's a regional bloc that has regional militia and government. They had a really strong army and militia there to fight Eritrea. But eventually he was able to bring peace to the region, and he made a peace deal that was brokered by the African Union. And yeah, he actually took that step, and he was actually awarded a Nobel Peace Prize in 2019 for that, because that was amazing. After years of fighting for that border, he was able to do what others had not been able to do. Now, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is one of the youngest presidents in Africa. Africa, we've been known to have presidents that last forever. They never leave their office. They stay. If they could stay for 100 years, some of them would stay for 100 years, ruling. But him being so young and promising and bringing all these good reforms and, peace and releasing the prisoners, good economic reforms, yes, he was deserving of that Nobel Peace Prize. In 2020, Ethiopia was to have their elections, but Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed decided, because of the COVID pandemic, let's postpone these elections, because it doesn't make sense for us to go ahead and do the elections and maybe some people will not vote. So what happened? Now, prior to this, Abiy Ahmed made a political party called Prosperity Party. And the TPLF, being the dominant party, was not amused, because they were like, we've been ruling for 30 years. You have been part of our party. What do you mean you're making this new prosperity party that we don't want? So they retreated to Tigray. They retreated to their regional bloc, and they're like, we are not for that. And they started becoming discontent because they realized that he was trying to reduce their influence, like bring down their influence. So in 2020, when he announced that the elections are going to be postponed, the Tigray leaders and governments, they were like, no, in fact, this is a tactic for you to amass power. We don't want you, and we're going to hold our own elections. Because you see, there's the regional elections and there's the federal now for the whole country. So they're like, no, we're gonna do the regional elections, you're not gonna cancel. So that was an affront. The second affront was when the Tigray army decided to attack the federal government army somewhere in Tigray. Now, Tigray's capital city, as I may put it, is Mekele. So they decided to attack them, and now the Prime Minister was like, this is enough. You want autonomy, and yet you're not respecting the position of my lead. Like, you're not respecting this presidency, right? It was almost like threatening his rule, his presidency. So he was like, we are going on the offensive. He got the Ethiopian government, and since he had brokered a peace deal with Eritrea, it was easy for him to call Eritrea and tell them, I need backup. And them, since they had a long-standing issue with Tigray, you remember they were fighting over the borders, and then they were won. I mean, they were defeated. So they were like, this is our opportunity to teach these Tigrayans a lesson. So, but that's what I think, because there was a backstory. It's not that Eritrea was just told, come, let's fight, a region just like that. They had issues with them even before. They were fighting with them for years before. So for them, it was a good opportunity to hit back. And so in 2021, there was a civil war that broke out. So the TPLF, the Tigrayan army, and the Ethiopian government army, and the part of the Eritrean army were fighting the Tigray to quash that, because they didn't want that dissension to lead to, like a coup or something like that. Now, the other thing that Tigray was uncomfortable about their prime minister was that they were like, why is he centralizing the power? By even putting that prosperity party, they're like, he wants to dismantle our regional blocks and just centralize the power, and they were not comfortable with that. So they were like, yeah, we are going to literally fight you. And unfortunately now, the way the fight has gone has been terrible. And I don't know, I think if you have time, you can watch the video I did of Somalia and how food is used as a weapon of war. So like in Tigray, there are about like 6 million to 7 million people, and because of the fights, like 2 million people have been displaced. The fights are so inhumane, the atrocities are crazy. That's what I can put it as. And Eritrea has been faulted as being very brutal in this. I told you they had some scores to settle. It seems like, yeah. So the people have been fleeing. They've been raped, sexual violence, there's been brutality. And then the oxymoron of the situation, we have a prime minister who's been awarded a Nobel Peace Prize and celebrated by the whole world, becoming repressive in the way he's fighting. So one of the things is cutting off food aid to Tigray, so that to frustrate the army and the Tigrayan people. So about 10% of the food aid and the supplies to help the people coming from the international community is reaching there. So there's a man-made famine in Tigray where a lot of people are actually dying. It's so sad, because how can your own leader turn against his own people, and yet he's the one who was saying war during the Nobel Peace Prize award ceremony? He was saying war is, the antithesis of humanity and these kind of things. And then all of a sudden, he's becoming repressive. The media has been given blackouts. Like, international journalists cannot even enter Tigray to see how terrible and to assess the situation. So it's such an oxymoron that on one hand, this was the person who was being awarded a peace prize, releasing political prisoners, instituting economic reforms. He was supposed to be bringing the country together. Now, even his own people are not so amused by this, because a group called the Oromo Liberation Front have formed in his own home place, like his own region, and they want him gone. So they have joined the it's the Oromo Liberation Army. The ULA has joined TPLF to fight the Ethiopian government, and that's back and forth is causing a lot of tension. It's taking Ethiopia back to where it should never have been. It's one thing to have a repressive government that's unites the nation and makes it stable and economy can thrive. It's another thing where you have a repressive leader who, because of the threats, which is understandable, because of course he has to defend his country, he cannot just let the TPLF come back. But I just believe it's the manner he's doing it. Like, you cannot be a Nobel Peace Laureate and then you're the one who's shutting down media in the country. Like, media has a blackout, journalists are being blocked, food is being blocked, so people are dying. There's a man-made famine in Tigray. It's a humanitarian disaster. Even during Joe Biden's tenure, he was like, we are going to sanction Ethiopia so that we stop trading with you, so that you can deal with this humanitarian crisis that you have caused. That was the threat, because they're under AGOA, and the president said, the US president said, we're gonna just remove that from you, so that we don't trade with you until you deal with this situation that's happening. So I don't know with the new administration, the Trump administration, if Trump will want to interfere. We've seen that he's more of a protectionist president and his interests are solely to the American people. So I don't know if he'll want to interfere with that. However, the prime minister and the government need to reassess this. Yes, there's a real threat. Yes, the TPLF should not be threatening his power and sovereignty of the country. On the other hand, how is he handling it? Are there better ways? That's a democratic nation. It is not an authoritarian country that, and he should return it to where it has come from. He should be taking it ahead and leading it to the future. So we hope that through negotiations with the TPLF and all the other regional leaders, that they can come down and sit and decide what is the best way for the country and how to quash this. Because having a civil war in a country, it pushes that country backwards to, you can't, I don't know, to like 30-40 years backward. And Ethiopia has looked so promising, you know. It has been so promising, even in the telecommunication arena. They've been really, you know, they have really extended their network everywhere. They have good roads, you know. They were, in terms of developments, they've been really up and coming. So it would be a pity if they go down that path, but we are praying that the leaders there will reconsider that, that power is not everything. The people are what matters. Economy is what matters. You cannot have a, you know, a nation that others look up to if you're unstable, if you're fighting each other. So, but the issues are pertinent, and the issues are not, you know, we don't take it lightly. It's not like 1 + 1 is equals to 2. We understand that these things, they have their roots, and both parties have their points to make. So we hope that he will be able to broker, because I believe he's still a promising leader. I believe that he can still change that narrative, but he has to take that brave step to just do it. Yeah, so that's all for today. I hope you have learned something. If you have anything else to say about that Ethiopian situation, you can just write down in the comments. I hope to see you soon. Bye. Goodbye.